We are live. It is Wednesday night talking hoops with the entire crew here. Ron Briscoe, T. Johnson, Coach Mac, aka Coach Johnson as well. So thank you to everyone who's joining in tonight. Of course, listening over on Sports Radio 102.9 The Game, over on YouTube, right here at broadscsouth.com, and over on AMP Radio. So as I always say, 4 different ways for you to watch and listen in to the show. You can also share it with your friends, like and subscribe if you would like to. I would appreciate it. And also, you can like and subscribe to the Fifth Quarter Podcast because tonight we have Sandy Adams. You guys know we had her the first time around. We'll get into how I slid into her DMs, which is always a fun story. So we'll talk about that as well. And, thanks to everyone once every week to come back here as the show continues to grow. We have good listeners. We had some listeners last week from India, which was really cool to see. So it's nice to see that we are getting around the world, which is really cool. So I thank everyone, the entire crew, for being in there. And in case you guys missed the announcement last week, which I'll announce again this week, Broad Street South is going to the Tony Bruno Sports Network. So we will be live Monday through Friday from 6 to 8. We're going to be following the legendary broadcaster, Tony Bruno, from 3 to 6. That transition will happen 2 weeks from now. And not only that, then we'll also do the crossover show. So the new show name will be Martinez and Company, still part of Broad Street South. And then the entire crew that you guys see here will come on within the last 15 minutes of the show, and then we'll transition over into Talking Hoops. So that's going to be fun. Basketball season is well underway. WNBA finals are still going on. NBA right now, Sixers down by 4. Phillies are up 9-2 in the bottom of the 8th. I've been distracted all night with the Phillies, but okay, it's a good thing. It happens. But before we bring Sandy on, Coach Johnson, how are you?
I am doing great. How are you doing this evening?
I'm good. My head's ready to explode, but I'm having a lot of fun. Coach Mac, how are you?
I am doing awesome. Glad basketball is gradually approaching.
And that indeed. And world famous, a.k.a. Mr. Nike, a.k.a. I know everybody. It is Ron Briscoe. Ron, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing well, Angel. Thanks for asking. And I tell you what, I'm just like all the rest of you guys. Basketball season is, just right there knocking on the door. I'm ready for it, man.
Yes.
I'm ready for it.
Yeah, I think everybody is. Hockey season started last night as well. That was good. The Lightning here locally won. Flyers are kicking it off tonight, so it'll be interesting to see what the Flyers end up doing. So there's a lot of sports. NFL is still, of course, kicking it alive, but basketball season, everybody knows that's what it's all about. And speaking of basketball season, from the University of Memphis, the Memphis Rebounders, speaker, brand strategist, photographer, Tennessee-born, Memphis bred. You guys know her. You guys love her. It is Sandy Adams joining us once again. Sandy, how are you? Oh, you're muted, Sandy. Nope. Still can't hear you. Still can't hear you. Something went wrong.
We had just heard her talk.
See, I know.
Yeah.
We heard talking in the very beginning. See, we went away and all of a sudden, and I know you're not muted on this end. I don't believe. Oh, hold on. She's trying. This is, see, folks, I'm telling you, every time when you go live, these things would happen. So she'll end up reconnect here in a second.
She's going to get it.
Yes, we can. We sure can.
Okay. There we go.
All right. So, Sandy, how are you?
I'm great. A little technical difficulties there, but I'm all about working around it.
All right. The only thing is, you might have to go because I'm getting the everybody else is.
What was that?
I'm getting it. So, yeah. So you may have to go in there.
Is that better?
Let's see. Nope, I can still hear me.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I'm just
What was that?
You can't hear it?
I can hear you.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll just have to hear myself because the mic echoing, but it's okay.
Take me off for a second.
Okay. We'll bring Sandy back on.
We're
We're
gonna get
gonna get
Sandy
Sandy
all
all
straight
straight
here.
here.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
we
will.
will.
One
One
second.
second.
Let me.
I'm
But
But
Angel,
Angel,
man,
man,
I saw the New Orleans Pelicans play last night preseason game, and I was really impressed with their play, even though they lost. But Zion Williamson looked really good.
You know,
Yeah, he definitely does. So,
oh, hold on. Still getting the echo. Let me
so
go.
go ahead, Angel.
Are
Hold
you
on.
getting
I
an echo
muted
from me?
Sandy real quick just to make sure that it didn't come back with the echo again as she's getting her equipment back up and running. No, there was an article that just came out not too long ago about Zion Williamson, about how kind of like the rise and fall, and a very short career to already come out with a rise and fall article. That's not a good thing.
No, it's not.
Mm,
I think him sitting out, despite being injured, the fact of being, young and having all of this upside where it was a lot of clout surrounding his name. This is the next LeBron James. And I mean,
mm,
that is a hard standard to live up to. I know he wasn't probably asking for himself to be compared to that, but to be compared to that standard and not be able to play an entire season, I think it just plummeted his stock.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing about it. Somebody coming in going to replace somebody, just like LeBron James. We were looking at to replace MJ, and then Kobe jumped in there, and he did a really good job. So, although we did put LeBron before Kobe, Kobe made it a mission that he was going to, you know, overtake LeBron and be that guy. But he never did. But he got close, but he never did. And with Zion being the way he is and having his problems, like you said, Coach Johnson, it's really hard to come in and be that person that's going to be, the name for the league, and everybody wants to, be able to say that's the next guy. He's a new coming, of the league. He's the guy we're going to talk about. And let me ask you guys this: now, didn't I read where Brandon Ingram got traded to the New York Knicks? Did I read that? Maybe it was just me. I thought I read where Brandon Ingram got traded to the Knicks, but I saw him play last night, and I was like, man, I thought he got traded.
I don't.
But
I don't know.
anyway,
no,
I,
Ron, I think you are right because I think I remember seeing an image of that a couple of days ago where it was showing him. I think he was in the hall. He was doing something. But I believe you are right on that one. I think he did get traded.
Oh,
so
wow.
something must have went wrong with the trade. Somebody must have didn't pass that physical, or they didn't let the trade go through, because I was like, Brandon Ingram, he's playing. I was like, what's
what's
going
going
on? I
on?
was
I
like,
was
I
like, I
know I
know I
saw
saw
this
this
guy
guy
on the
on the
trading
trading
block.
block.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we'll
we'll
definitely look
definitely look
into
into
that
that
and
and
confirm
confirm
those
those
facts.
facts.
I'm
I'm
still getting
still
the
getting an
echo
echo.
Hmm.
Yeah,
of
Sandy's trying
vibration.
to. Sandy, I'm going to take her out for a second. I'm going to, for a moment, I'm going to exit out of here. Well, I'm gonna take away my camera for a second, see if I can work with Sandy here to get our audio straightened out. So you guys continue the conversation, and I will be back here momentarily.
Okay.
I will say it was good to see Ben Simmons out there playing.
Oh yes.
Yes.
I was happy to see that. I think, there's been a lot of talk around his entire situation, right?
Hmm.
And just
Hmm.
about, you know, uh, his lack of ability to perform after the playoff situation that occurred. Um, but I think that he still has a lot of potential and he's really young.
Hmm.
And it's still time, I think, where he needed that time, I think, to focus on his mental well being and um,
Hmm.
coming from a different culture. He's from Australia,
That's right.
coming to America. I think that transition, the standards are different, the pressure is a little bit different. You're in a
Hmm.
place where there's more guys that can compete on your level and are equally as good. So I think it'll be interesting to watch this season. I'm hoping that he can make it through a full season, though.
I agree with you. Mental health is a big thing, going on with these players day in and day out now, with the pressure that's put up on them by the amount of money that they're making, and the fans are requiring them to go out and to play at full throttle all the time, and to be that player that they came in with the hype about them. Speaking of Ben Simmons, talking about he's from Australia. Once again, I have to, go in my little book here and say I do know him. I do know his dad. I do know his godfather, David Patrick, who's originally from Australia.
Hmm.
And David came and played. He's played at my alma mater. As a matter of fact, he went to Syracuse for 2 years, but then he left and he came and played at the University of Louisiana. And David told me about him when he was in high school, and he said, "Hey man, Ron, you need to see this guy. He's my godson, and he's going to be really good." And it was Ben Simmons, and so I went and saw him, and yeah, he was good. The old lefty was pretty good, and he went to LSU
Hmm.
during that time. Johnny Jones was the head coach, and David was an assistant coach, and he went there, and they knew he was going to just leave after 1 year, but that also weighed in because they put him on a pedestal. He
Hmm.
didn't have to work hard, and then when he got into the league, it became a different thing. So, like you talked about, Coach T, that mental health really affected him. He couldn't handle that, being that stardom when he stepped out there on the stage all the time, and being able to work on his development to get his
Hmm.
skills to where they were elite skills day in and what night in and night out on the basketball court. What do you think, Coach Mack?
I think it's going to be interesting, especially with this new rule coming to play where, the players are basically mandated to play. How much is this going to affect mental health and injuries? Um, for playing for an extensive period of time, basically back to back, I think it's going to unfortunately shorten some of the players, um, longevity in the career. But um, I don't know. It's a lot of interesting moving parts that's taking place with the NBA right now that I'm just curious to see how things would play out in the long run, especially with, more younger players coming in, for example, like LeBron's son and things such as that. How long is he going to be at USC? When will LeBron retire? So it's going to
Mm-hmm.
be it's going to be a lot of interesting moving parts that's taking place within college basketball and in the NBA.
I
Yeah,
think it's
well, go
really,
ahead, Coach.
I was just going to say, just piggybacking off of what you said earlier, Ron, I think it's really underrated about the big jump it is to come from college basketball into the NBA.
Oh
NBA,
yeah.
you're playing 86 games in a season, and then that's
Hmm.
not even including if you make it to postseason play. And here you have college players playing, 30, 32 games in a season, and then you factor in postseason play, they are not playing more than 45 games.
Right.
So you make
Yeah.
that big jump, and I think Zion is. We can see him being an example of that, of underestimating the ability and how difficult it is to jump from college to NBA and having to fly on a plane after the night after a game and fly to the next location and turn around, go over film, get maybe 7 hours of sleep, have to do rehab, recovery, practice, shoot around, and then another game. That is.
Well, let's not forget social media and the media that plays, the things they have to do in incorporating with that too, in addition to their schedule.
It is.
All great points. All great points, guys.
Right. We're going to try again here with Sandy. Sandy, we'll try this again.
Okay, testing 1, 2, 3.
Yay.
All right.
Yay!
Okay. I'm so sorry. I
Hey,
do
Sandy,
this
what
all
did
the
you do?
time.
Did you
Dude,
did you wave the wand or what, girl? Tell
I
me.
waved the wand. Okay, I'm ready to go. Sorry about that.
No, you're
Woo.
good. So we have Sandy. Sandy had started with Michael Wilson, the Fifth Quarter podcast. You guys can hear it right here on Sports Radio 102.9 FM. The Game. They do a fantastic job, as they call themselves, the co-hosts. Both of them there with Michael Wilson, and we're hoping to have him on tonight. We understand he's busy, but we'll get him on another time. But Sandy, which I always love to kind of tell the story. So now, when I originally met Sandy, you guys have to, we're going to go back here a couple of months. So there was, not only was I obviously rebuilding the website, then on top of that, the apps were being created. The apps are not the easiest things in the world to create. There's a lot of hassle that
That's
comes with
right.
it.
That's
So when
right.
I reached out to Sandy, it was very bare bones on the website. Basically, there was a web address and then there was
That's
nothing else.
right.
So when I slid into Sandy's DMs, I'm pretty sure the conversation, and you guys have to envision this in my head here. Let's see, who's this guy? Maybe I should delete. No, I'll send. So Sandy was kind enough to send me the message back, and she asked me why I should be on the show, and I explained it to her. And then I want to say about 2 weeks later, Sandy, we had you on for the first
Yeah,
time.
exactly. I know. I was like, okay, you do understand. I don't play basketball, like
Right.
you, because, and he's like, sure, but yeah, I did go through that process because we've laughed about it on the show before because I get some strange DMs, and so he was very nice, and I'm just like, okay, who is this person? And I'm not a basketball player, and then I go to your website, and I'm like, there's nothing really there. But then I thought, if he's a serial killer, he can't really kill me through the internet. So,
I don't know about Angel. I'm just kidding.
a friendship was born through Twitter. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So I made sure that I had on my best suit, my breast stretch shoes. Therefore, when I slid into the DMs, it was business. It had nothing to do with anything else. But no, with Sandy, it's been fun because Sandy, the nice part about Sandy and the great part that I think that we really enjoy is so depending on how the night is going, there's a great thing about Sandy, and I want you guys to see you pay attention. The Southern kind of Midwest twang comes out. And that's when you can tell she's very relaxed. She enjoys the conversation. And it's a lot of fun because the last time when Michael was on, we had so much fun where he kept pointing it out, like, listen to Memphis Sandy.
Yeah. I go through professional Sandy, and then I go through, oh my God, y'all, like, really?
Yeah.
And now I can't really do it, but yeah, sometimes I do. Yeah.
You and Coach Mac had that little twang in y'all's.
Yeah.
Yes.
I forget.
Southern
you know.
twang.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But speaking of
which I really enjoy.
just what it may come out. We'll see how the night progresses, but it ended up coming out. So thank you anyways. And for those who don't know, we had a little bit of technical difficulty in the very beginning. We finally got it sorted out. So it's, again, we go live, folks. When we go live, things happen. So it won't be the first time. Sure as heck won't be the last time, but we have fun with it nonetheless. But Sandy with the Fifth Quarter Podcast. And for the new viewers that are here on Talking Hoops, from here in the U.S. and internationally, who listen in also on Sports Radio 102.9 The Game, you guys, it was unique on how you guys started the Fifth Quarter Podcast. And I know Michael describes it really well, but if you can let everybody know exactly how it came about, and then all the interviews you guys have had on at this point, because every interview, one gets more interesting than the next.
It does. It really does. So short story, I'm vice president of the booster club for the University of Memphis men's basketball program. It's all voluntary. And Michael Wilson, he is a former Harlem Globetrotter and a legend for the Harlem Globetrotters, only have like 30-something. He's also a former Memphis Tiger, and when I was in grad school, he was playing basketball in Memphis. So I was very well aware of who he was. And I do the social media for the Rebounders on Instagram and all the social media platforms. And so last fall, as a part of our social media campaign to kind of ramp up the season, we reached out to, or our president did, to former players and asked them to do some quick videos saying, we're looking forward to the new season. And Michael did one for us. And then in February, Lorenzen Wright, who was an NBA player and also a Memphis legend, we had his jersey retired. The university did. And so Michael was there because he was one of his teammates, and he was there, and I actually met him in person. And then probably I would say probably May, he reached out to me on Instagram because we follow each other on Instagram, and he was like, hey, I had this thought. Can we have a short conversation? And of course, I'm like, me? Like, what do you want to do? Like, what do you want with me? Like, I don't understand. And so I'm like, okay, I'll talk to you. So we had a conversation, and, he started talking about how he was in the Harlem Globetrotters for 10 years. And he made the decision to leave. He was, he knew that he could only play so many years, and he had, I think at that time, he already had one son, and his wife called him, and she was expecting another one. And he's like, I can't, because their schedule, in my opinion, is much harder than an NBA schedule. A lot of times they are playing 2 games a day, and they only get like 30 days off. And they have a rigorous schedule all over the world. And so he was just kind of burned out, and he was like, I want to be a dad. And he had even though he kind of knew what he wanted to do, he had such a hard transition period leaving competitive sports. And so when he reached out to me, I said, well, I'm a brand strategist and I'm a career strategist, and I've worked with thousands of professionals with all types of degrees, very experienced, who, when they lose their job, they don't really know what to do. They feel like they've lost their value. And he said, that's how I felt. And he said, when COVID struck, a lot of the Harlem Globetrotters, some that had played with each other and some that hadn't, they all started having Zoom meetings. They'd have one big Zoom meeting a week. And they all shared about how hard it was to transition after competitive sports, whether it was their own decision or not. It was really, really hard. And he said, I want to do something with that. And he's also working on his own autobiography, which he's entitled My Fifth Quarter. And I already have my own personal podcast, and I love doing it because I really love sharing stories and hearing people's stories. And so I was like, let's do a podcast. And I didn't realize when we started it just how much I would enjoy it. And obviously, in the beginning, we started with players that were from Memphis, that had played for Memphis, and just to kind of build up that fan base here in Memphis. Michael lives in D.C., but he grew up in Memphis. And so, the very first ones were really, really enthralling. And for me, it was great just to sit there and, see these people that Michael had looked up to. And that was kind of an interesting perspective too. But yeah, every single one, and we've tried to venture out. We want to touch on all sports, but obviously we know more basketball players, especially Michael. He knows more basketball players than other sports, but we do have other sports coming. But it's just been like really, really interesting. And it's just kind of, I just published our 20th podcast this morning, and, we had to stop because we got so far ahead that people were wanting to be on the show, but we couldn't sign them up yet because it would be like 2 months before their episode came out. So we kind of had to slow down a little bit, but it's really been fascinating. There has not been one single story that has been the same.
Yeah.
And it's, a lot of times it's, it didn't end the way they wanted it to, and how hard it was to transition, and, what their thought process was going into college and graduating from college. And, it's just so many things, and just so many stories. It's just been really, really enlightening.
It has been. If you guys, and I will tell you that for every episode that starts and they have it, I listen in. I've 2 reasons why. One, because I was very intrigued when it started, and then obviously have them over on the radio station. But the stories, you're right, Sandy, because if Ron, I would take it this way. If coach and coach, how we have the unscripted, just think of coach and coach, and just different people and telling their stories. And it's very telling because you get all emotions. Some guys, when they come in the beginning of the show, you can tell that it's some people, I don't want to say tense, but it's the first time. So it's kind of one of those things that are rolling into it.
It's uncomfortable for them. The one thing that I've realized is that athletes can play in front of 20,000 people, but if you put them in front of a camera, like they get really, really uncomfortable. And we've always said that we wanted it to be more of a conversation. And obviously when it starts, especially if they've played with Michael in any capacity, they're talking, hoops and all that kind of stuff, or talking, growing up in Memphis. And that seems to warm them up quite a bit. And then we get into those hard conversations, and then they're very open about it. But yeah, it's been really, really interesting.
It has been.
Well, Sandy, I got several really interesting stories I like to share with your listeners. With Josh Passner, who was the head coach at Memphis, Adonis Thomas, who played there, Lorenzen Wright, who you talked about, he got killed, but his dad Herb Wright and a couple of more guys that that I took care of when I worked with
Right.
Nike when I was a talent scout.
Right.
So going from high school and going to Memphis and going through the process of why they wanted to go to Memphis, mostly it's because, like you said, they grew up there
That's right.
and it was
That's right.
tradition.
Right.
And the people in the neighborhood supported them a lot, and it was like, man, you come to Memphis, man, you got all your people, man. We're gonna be at the games like we've been at all the high school games when you played. So it was like being back at home. So yeah, it's I like to share some of those
Yeah.
stories with you about some of those guys.
Yeah. It's just, I think the one that really, William Bedford, he played, I think 83 through 85, and he was our second. We did Michael first, and he was our second one. And I started college in '86, which was right after William went into the NBA draft in the summer
Hmm.
of '86, and Larry Finch had just become coach. And if you know
Hmm.
Memphis basketball history, our previous coach had some issues with the legal system, and Larry was stepped into the head coaching role. But Larry's legacy in Memphis was, when he was in college, he stayed home. He could have gone and played pro ball, and he stayed home to play for the University for Memphis State at the time. But this was just a few years after after Martin Luther King had been shot here, and so what I find really, I don't know, inspiring is that, Larry and that whole team really kind of brought the city of Memphis together. It was so split after Dr. King was killed, and they just really brought the city together. And I think that really kind of, it emphasizes the culture of Memphis and how basketball really brings the city together. When the Tigers are winning, the city, it doesn't matter who you are, what color, what economic background, what political background, it doesn't matter. Everybody's talking about that. Now, there's been some discussions, and maybe that's another conversation about how the Grizzlies have had an effect on basketball culture in Memphis. But just, Williams interview, he wanted to talk about it, but the thing that he started off with was, when he had only been playing for 6 years when he
Hmm.
was drafted into the NBA. But playing college ball, he said that there was not a single game that he played in the Mid-South Coliseum where he did not get high before the game.
Wow.
He played every game. And so I'm listening to that, and he said, that was the only way that he could go out there and play basketball. And I asked him, I said, you if there had been a conversation, because obviously it was anxiety that he was having, and I said,
Hmm.
if you had a conversation or somebody had about that, and there had been a process to put something in place to help you cope with that better, your life would maybe have gone down a different path, because he ended up going to prison for 10 years
Hmm.
for drugs, for selling drugs, and and he agreed with me, and he said, I've often thought about that. And so then I started having more discussions with other people who had played basketball and other sports about, did they have anxiety? And a lot of them said yes. But I found that to be just, that really kicked off our series and just getting those in-depth conversations about that. But, it's just, it's just one of those things where you nobody, not everybody is Steph Curry, and you're going to have all these everyday people that they have worked their entire life to play sports, and it doesn't always end up the way they want it to. And so it's just how they deal with that is really fascinating.
That mental health, probably wasn't a big thing
It
back
wasn't.
then like
It
it is
wasn't.
today,
It wasn't.
but that played a role in it.
Hmm.
Like you guys played college basketball like I did, and it is a lot of pressure going out
Sure.
there and knowing that if you don't get out there and do the right things and turn the ball over or make a mistake or miss a defensive assignment or miss a guy open, you're gonna get yanked out.
Right.
And sometimes you may not get back in the game. And of course, your buddy's gonna say, "Oh man, I came to see you play, man. You on the bench over there. What's the heck's going on?" That puts a lot of pressure on you,
It
and you got to
does.
find a way.
It
You
does.
got to find a way to calm down and get refocused. So you're gonna do something. Either you're gonna put your blinders on and get focused, or you're gonna go into do something else to get focused. And sometimes what he did, it probably helped him to become focused, but it just happens. Mental health is a big
It
thing
is. It is.
that gets you out of control.
Mm-hmm.
Sandy, let me ask you this, because it sounds like the podcast is a great opportunity, for therapy in a
Oh
sense. So,
yes.
what opportunities do you see like birthing from this?
I think one of the things that we saw initially was we wanted to have these conversations to help all the up and coming athletes learn
Mhm.
from, you know, mistakes that have been made, perspectives,
Mm.
just seeing how people approach life after sports and all of those things. We would like to see it. We would love to be able to work with athletes that are anticipating their fifth quarter, which is their
Mm,
retirement from
Mm.
college sport or competitive sports. We would like to see somehow where we have the ability to work with them, coaching them on, what is your brand? And these days, I think that with social media and everything going on, I think that athletes have such a great opportunity to start so young. They can start in high school building up what they're doing, especially, if you look at Angel Reese, and there's a female gymnast that goes to LSU also, they control the NIL money now. They are the leaders in that. And they've already built up a brand. But
mm-hmm.
there's all these other athletes that maybe don't think about that or don't have that opportunity to do that, and don't know what they're going to do when they get out of their competitive sports. We have a special sub series going on with the. We have a whole new women's basketball staff with the University of Memphis, and so I had the great idea of let's because I don't. People don't talk about women's sports in Memphis enough, and I've been very vocal about that. And I thought, how can I use our platform to do that? And I was like, let's do a sub series where we just sit down with every single member of the new coaching staff and talk to them about how they got to where they are now. And originally, when I met them, I loved every one of them. I just felt like I'd known them for years. They're all women except for one assistant coach who is a man.
Mm-hmm.
And all of their stories are somewhat different, but like today we interviewed one. Her name is Harlan Wyatt, and she is the recruiting coordinator, and she is the one of the assistant coaches, and she's from Atlanta, and she talked about, strangely enough, incidentally, her grandmother, who just passed away this past year, knew Martin Luther King Jr. She
Mm.
was up and coming, in the political arena in Atlanta. And so she had known him and worked with him. And, in the course of talking to Harlan, I said, what was it like? Because she went to Tulane to college. What was it like, in your senior year? Did you already know what you wanted to do? And she said, I didn't really want to go pro. But she said, I was under so much pressure because I did not know what I wanted to do after
Mm-hmm.
college, you
Wow.
know? And I think that if anything, we would love to see if there is some consulting we can do or developing programs for athletes as they transition. Because I think that unless you are a higher up player like a LeBron James, like a Stephen Curry, like any of those that have really built a brand because they are superstars, I think that most of the average everyday athletes don't necessarily know what to do next.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
And so that's a good question. That's something that we've really, as the podcast develops, we really are looking at what else can we do with that.
So,
I would
Sandy, you made a. I'm sorry. Go ahead, T.
No, I was just going to say, I think just speaking to what Sandy said, I think just from my experience is our time as athletes in college is being so consumed with
Mm-hmm.
classes and
Yes.
practice and films and extra workouts and travel that I think it becomes a problem of finding time
Exactly.
to engage in
Mm-hmm.
extracurricular activities where we're able to explore other hobbies and things that we like that we would
Right.
possibly want to pursue after college is over.
Right.
But I think with your platform, you have a way to reach more people with
Yes.
the development of technology now to be able to, like you said, consult on that and explore
Right.
a bit further.
One thing
Mm-hmm.
that we've really noticed, and when we started out, we were booking all these interviews, and they were all men. And I said, we need to have some more women. But then we started talking, and I said, the road to pro sports for women is very limited.
Hmm.
There's not
Mm-hmm.
that many opportunities. And over the course of all of the people we've talked to so far, the women go into college for the most part with a focus on education and what they're going to do next. The
Mm-hmm.
men don't. They go in with the
Hmm.
focus of, I want to be an NFL, I want to be NBA, and they don't think about anything else. It's true. But
Yeah.
strangely enough, most of them who have kids have corrected that issue with their own children. One gentleman, Russell Copeland, he played for University of Memphis football, and he said he had to retire at 28 from the NFL. He had an injury, and it was one of those. It wasn't like a quick retirement. It was one of those prolonged. The phone never rings, and you can't quite get back into the shape you were. But he said every one of his children, he's like, you must have something besides the sport you play.
Hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
that's what most of them who have children have changed that whole process around. And so, that just goes to show you that if you put the effort into it, you can help start having those conversations. The other thing that I've come to realize is all of the women we've talked to, the women coaches have been very, very specific about making sure their players have something else other than their sports career. And having those conversations around that, whereas the men's teams have not done that, which I find, which goes back to that, they're focused on they've got to go pro or nothing else kind of mentality.
Saying like they've been doing this for so long,
Yes.
they gotta hang their hat on that one thing that they do
Right.
well,
Right.
and they think that that one thing that they do well is what's going to get them up the ladder
That's right.
and get them down this path and that path. But it's like you said, if they don't develop another career, another craft to back that up, or to develop and start another
Yeah.
brand, then they'll just be like hit that dead end,
Right.
and they're gonna say like, "Hey, what else you got for us? That's it?
Hmm.
We're moving in a different direction."
They are
I don't have that skill level yet, you know.
they are one injury away from the end of their
Mm-hmm.
career. Every single
Mhm.
day,
Yep.
they are one injury away. And
Mhm.
as much as I think that, I understand that whole thing about focus and determination in, going after what you want, you've got to. But at the other side of it, anything can happen on any day,
Mhm.
and it can all
Mm-hmm.
be over. And you have to start somehow thinking about, what is my plan B? What is my plan C? And that's, I hope that if anything, the one thing that I do like is that we have so much versatility in our and variety in our guests and in our sports as we go
Mhm.
forward, that I think it's going to be touching all these different types of people. And hopefully the young people will start, listening in and taking advantage of some of these conversations.
Now,
Well,
quick question, Sandy. Have you noticed with any of your interviews almost this false sense of pressure that some of these athletes didn't feel like they could go explore some other options just based on pressures of coaches? I mean, when you have a high expectation placed on you to perform, um, you know, any idea or thought about an extra
Right.
activity, I mean, it could set a coach off, right? But Are you finding any trends with that? That
No.
maybe it's this perception that they can't go and do these things.
No, it's the so far what it's and the women's staff is much younger than a lot of the other guests that we've had. But it's all been about that was their focus. That was their focus. And, we had one coach, Whitney Bays. She's an assistant coach for the women's team. Her whole life, she came from a basketball family, and she was like, I'm going to the WNBA. And she had all these horrific injuries, even when she was overseas playing. But her mentality was, I'm going to recover and I'm still going to play. And she's like, I never once thought about anything else. Now, the lady today, I just
Miss
lost my train.
Wyatt.
Thank you, Harlan Wyatt. She said her dad had played pro ball in France for 10 years. So she had that, she had that parent who knew about all of that. But her family, her mom and her aunts and uncles, and they were all educators. So her mom was like, you're going to college. I'm not paying for it, but you're going to college. So you're going to use, basketball to get there. But she was focused on education. And she finally had to say, I've got to focus on my sport if I want to, get any better. But yeah, it's strangely not been that case.
Well, Sandy,
Sa-
what I want to say, like, they may not want to hear this, but I want to volunteer Coach Mack and Coach Johnson to interview for you. So
I
they,
would definitely do it.
okay, well, good. I was gonna say they may
I
not
would
want
love
to
to
do
do
it.
it.
They may not want to do
No,
it, but
I would
they are
definitely do it.
two good candidates for you.
Oh yeah, we've got this long list, and so we're just adding to it. I will say that doing 2 episodes a week has been a little bit taxing on me. I do all the production. Michael's just the booker.
Wow.
I do all the production, and I'm gonna say, I was like, man, that was a great idea. I had to do the women's sub series thing, but I said it's been tough, so it'll be over in a couple more weeks. But
So
yeah.
Cindy, let me ask you this. How often have you heard of parents having an influence on players playing a sport that they really didn't want to play?
A
And I'm
lot.
asking this because, yeah, and I'm saying this because just during my time, I was an assistant coach at a college in Mississippi. There were oftentimes when female players would come in, obviously they come in with different backgrounds and they're used to different type of coaching,
Right.
but when they get on the collegiate level, it's a lot more structure. It's
Yes.
it's different, and they don't know how to handle that pressure, and so it's like they're faced with do I stay or do I quit?
Right.
And it's kind of, you kind of hate to see it because you want to see female athletes progress, you want
Right.
to see them do well. But on the flip side, it's like, you have to do what's best for you. And one thing I used to always tell my players, you only get one life to live. So
Yes.
Hmm.
live it for you. And you can't live it for anybody else. Um, but I'm just curious to know, how often do you hear it seems like parents is more of the influence than anything else?
So, outside of our interviews, I'm going to say that I hear, because I know a lot of people that coach or have some type of participation in sports of some kind, but I think that it's those parents that didn't have that. I think it's those parents that want to live through their children.
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
and they because
Yeah.
there are also a lot of parents out there that their mentality is, my kid is awesome, my kid's gonna go to the next
Woo.
level. And we're and
See?
people are like, your kid's not good, like
Right.
Hmm.
your kid is not good.
I have said that many times.
We
So
can't be watching the same game.
no, so I know we must be in different games. So I think for the kids that are really good and their parents see are very realistic about it, I think that that's reality. But I do think there's a lot of parents out there that do push their kids into something because they think it's going to get them somewhere, instead of and then you ruin the kid's outlook because and William Bedford is a great example. His parents did not push him into that. His mom didn't push him into that. but everybody in the neighborhood did. He did
Mm-hmm.
not grow up
Wow.
playing basketball. But when he started growing really tall, they were like, he needs to play basketball. You need to play
Mm.
basketball. And he said everywhere he went, everybody was like, you should play basketball. He's like, I don't want to play basketball. He's like, I
Mm-hmm.
hate basketball.
Mhm.
And, until he was like a sophomore and somebody kind of instructed him, like, this is how you can be more comfortable playing basketball. But he
Mm-hmm.
he was like, I hate it. He goes, I hated it. I hated hearing that. And so you do have a lot of those people that are like, you should do this and you should do that. So yeah.
That is, and I've told you this before, Sandy. It's still to this day. You guys are 20 episodes in, and the fun. And I'll get back to William here in a second. But it was funny because when you guys were on, we were at right about 200, and Michael says, "You guys are at 200." I'm like, "Don't worry about it. You guys will get there quick, and you're already up to 20." But the William Bedford, till this day, still my favorite episode that you guys have put together because you have to, and I'm encouraging everyone who's listening to the show here. Again, if you're listening on a sports radio 102.9 the game, we'd appreciate it. But you guys have to listen into episode 3, William Bedford, episode 2,
It's
excuse me,
episode two.
episode 2. And when you hear the emotions, you will get everything wrapped up in one episode. And Ron, you've heard me say this before when it comes to Coach Unscripted, you just grab your popcorn and listen in. That is one episode with William Bedford. You can grab a tub of popcorn and you still cannot get all the emotion that comes through there because the stories that he shares and how he says it in detail and how upset he was with the NBA. I mean,
Yeah.
there are so many parts to that you can almost go back and just say, hey, Sandy and Michael, why don't you guys have them on again? I have this question for him. I have that question for him. There, you can take away so many different parts to that interview because it is the most raw interview that I
It
would
is.
say that you would hear on any podcast anywhere. And Sandy and Michael, you guys did a phenomenal job on that one.
Thank you. The two aspects for me were the very first part where you talked about the smoking the marijuana to be able to play in the Coliseum. But the other one was we usually end every episode asking the guests, like, what do you think your value is now? And he said, I don't have a value.
Wow.
And I was so quick to jump in because even in my because I worked with a nonprofit out of Houston for 5 years teaching job search to people with college degrees, master's degrees, PhDs, engineers, like lawyers, accountants, like all of these people who were experienced, and when they lost their job, they lost their value in their head.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Wow.
it's really hard. It doesn't, and that's why I think that this podcast is really great for anybody. It's not just about athletes, but when people lose that tie with a job title, they feel like they have no value. It doesn't
Right.
matter how experienced, how great they are, how educated they are. But when William said, I don't think I have any value, I was like, no, you do. Everyone has a value. And I think that, that was something that we realized after the very first few ones. And I was like, we wanted to have those conversations about, your value is more than an athlete.
That's right.
Your value is so much more than that. And taking what you've gone through and helping the next generation of whoever. But yeah, the value question, and we've already had like three or four interviews where the people are like, man, I feel like I'm in a therapy session.
You are.
But they still talk about it and they still open up and get raw about it. And yeah, it's just been really great about that.
Well,
So
it's
speaking
an
of
enlightened subject.
It is.
yeah. So speaking of value, since you help people build their brand, when you have someone like that, how do you help them really dig deep inside themselves to know what their value is, so that way they can actually see that they are their brand and build their brand based off of that?
So the very first thing, and that's a great question because when I started teaching job search back in 2018, I thought it was just going to be job search, like how to find a job, how to do your LinkedIn profile. But like 2 or 3 weeks in, I realized it wasn't about that. Nobody can do any of that unless they believe in themselves. And that goes back with the mindset and what they're good at. And one of the first things that I do is I start talking to the person about, what you're feeling is not special. Everybody goes through this. Thousands and thousands of people are feeling the same thing. And, let's sit down and talk about what are your transferable skills? What are the things you're really good at? What are the things that you enjoy? And then working with them to get them to see that. We are our hardest critics on ourselves. And you have to flip that mindset around. And a lot of times it's really hard for individuals because you can't rely on your friends and your family because they're not objective. Okay. They are not objective. And you need a person who can be objective about it and help you talk through that. And I find it's harder for women because just the way society and the way women have been raised, it's hard for them to see their value and be able to express that. Being visible is hard for a lot of people, and visible is not just showing up and somebody seeing you. It's putting your resume out there, putting your LinkedIn profile up, emailing somebody, messaging somebody. All of those things play a part in mindset and motivation and self-confidence. And I had one lady, she came up to me after a class, and she was an IT director. She had a master's degree. She was in her late 50s, early 60s. And she's like, and she's almost in tears, and she's like, I can't call somebody I don't know. I just can't do that. And I said, well, then let's email them. You can do that. And over the course of the year and me working with her and prompting her, I wanted her to start posting on LinkedIn more. And she's like, I don't know what to post. And she also taught black belt karate. And I said, think about how you can blend those two together, because that's the one thing that I do talk about is we're all a pyramid, a triangle. You have your education, your experience, and then you have the what you've gone through. And that's what makes you special more than anybody else you're in competition with, because that's how you show up and make it a little bit different from the next person. And so, over the course of the year, she started writing these articles about how she used karate and teaching karate to become a better business leader. And she started enjoying the process, and she started getting more confident about it. And people started noticing her articles, and she started writing them better and showing up better. And so eventually she applied for a CIO position, which is Chief Information Officer. And she'd never applied for that type of position before. And when she went to interview, they said, we've already read everything on your LinkedIn profile. Everything. Everything. We know that you're qualified. Yeah. We just want to know if you'll fit with the culture here. That was their only concern. Like, will you fit with our culture? Mm-hmm. And by the time she left the interview, she already had a job offer by the time she got home. But just seeing over the course of the year, and so it really is about, there's no magic pill quickly, but it's about, talking to them and getting them to go through these exercises so that they can see themselves and they can get used to accepting that these are what they're good at. Kind of things.
Well, we got about 5 minutes here left in the show, and I want to. Here's what I want to say. At least go around the room here for a second. But we talked about people in the interview. LinkedIn and LinkedIn is very, very strong.
Yes.
If you have your information up there, you did get. There's a lot of people that reach out. I was surprised once I put myself out there how quick everybody's to go back and say, hey, we have this opening. This is happening, and so it's a lot of fun as far as when it comes to LinkedIn. But I've always wondered. And I wish just one time we can do it. Have any of you guys ever watched the movie Step Brothers?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I would love one day. If you can go, like, instead of being the interviewee, when the person says, so talk to me a little about yourself, and you can just spin it on real quick just to see the reaction. Like, well, let me ask you, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself? Because when you go to an interview, we're being honest, is that you're looking obviously to land the job. So you're going to say majority of the time what they want to hear and then share some input about yourself. But just one time, I would love to be like, if it was Sandy, for example, doing the interviewing, like, so Sandy, I know you want to say like, where am I going to be at in 5 years? I know it's going to be one of those questions, but where do you see yourself right now?
That's
If
a
you
great
want to,
question.
True. They do ask that question.
they do. And
Yeah.
it was just, to me, it would be fun because you get to spin it on that person just to see like the natural reaction. Like, oh, wait a minute. You're putting me in a spot here. Yes, I know. I'm coming
Mhm.
into your office. I'm putting you in a spot
That's right.
just as much as you are me. But I think it also will kind of read the room a little bit better because
Mhm.
you would see like, okay, I can kind of see where this person's coming from
Right.
and have a little more fun. I've been with the company that I work for now. We had three people come in. One person, I actually ended up doing it on that person. And I said, so I know we're trying to learn a lot about each other. So why don't you ask me an interesting question? And he just looked at me like, huh? I said, like,
Yeah,
something out of
people
the
don't
ordinary.
people
And
don't
they're,
want to ask questions about the person they're interviewing with. It's a two-part thing. It's like going on a date. I compare job search to dating so much because it is like going on a date, and people have to realize that just because you're going on an interview doesn't mean you have to accept that job, and you've got to ask them questions too. You may not want to work for them.
right.
But the hardest question in an interview is the one that says, "Tell me about yourself." It's the
Yeah.
hardest question for people to answer.
Now,
And it's
I've
the
done it.
hardest thing for people to do, to tell you about
That's right.
themselves
It
too.
Yeah.
is. It's
See,
really.
but I've goofed around with it before, and it was a company that I wanted to work for, and so I started doing more research. And when that question came up, they said, "So tell me about yourself." I said, "Well, I like to take long walks in short parks. I like large house
Long
dogs."
walks and short
And then the person just looked at me like, "What?" I'm like, well, you said tell me something about. I'm telling you something about
That's
myself.
right.
And then
That's right.
the interview actually went really well, which was surprising. And the guy said to me, he goes, "Can I ask you another question?" I said, "Sure. We've been going so well tonight." He goes, "There's another company I would love for you to work for." And that's where actually I went to go work for. It wasn't the one I applied for. He gave me a better job. I'm like, hey, this is great. So when I got over there, the big thing was we had lockers, and it wasn't like your usual lockers. And up there it says he likes long walks in short parks. And I went behind and get the job. So man, you never know. But
That's
I
right.
never thought about that, Sandy, as far as like going for an interview, like a date. I that
It
never
is.
crossed my mind. That's actually a good way to think about it.
It is, and that's that's the one thing that we really talk about, and how you don't marry everybody you go on a date with. You don't have to.
No.
You don't have to accept every job interview that you interview with. Yeah.
This would be the ideas that end up popping in your head because this, Sandy, you might have to come back for another one because that would be. I think that would be
Definitely
a
gonna have to
fun
come back.
segment to hear about like people and their interviews and how it goes about because everybody's completely different. But there are generic questions. I don't care where you go. There's some like you can even walk into a Dunkin' Donuts, see the person getting interviewed in the corner, and you always hear that question. So where do you see yourself 5 years from now? Oh boy, here we go again.
Okay. See, I'll tell you, I've never asked that when I've interviewed people. Never.
That's good.
I always ask, "Why should I hire you?" which freaks everybody out.
Mhm.
I like that question.
I,
Yeah,
I, I always used to end with the question when I worked in corporate America with, "Why should I hire you?" And yeah, that was some funny answers.
Oh yeah, my sister always used to joke, and she would tell me, "Because you guys need help." And so,
I used to say, well, why not?
Oh, I had one lady. She looked at me and she said, "Because." Because why? Just because.
it's funny. It's got to be fun. I know when and I know we have to wrap it up because I there's another engagement behind this one, but the fun part was when I was in Philly. So Philly, of course, we're a whole different animal in Philadelphia. It's just it's a hard blue collar city. But I remember when I became a trainer, then I started pulling people in. So it's different ways you can become a bus driver. And I remember when they told me, "Sorry, Angel, you're going to do an interview, and I want you to talk to these folks now, even though yes, they do work for us, but I want to see, how do they feel about transitioning from working in a small bus to a larger bus?" Okay, so they had my interview with the first person. I said, "So listen, John, I know you're coming from a small bus, you're going into a bigger bus. What do you think the difference is?" And he just gave me this straight look to my face. He goes, "It's bigger." I'm like, "Okay." But explain to me like the turn radius. How much different is it? He goes, "I don't know. You just gotta watch, make sure like no one's across." What are you getting at? I'm like, just forget about it. We'll talk about it in class. But it's different because everybody's a little different. When I again just use an example. Once I was supposed to be on first shift. We ended up getting shorthanded. We had supervisors that we had lost. So at one point, I was running all three shifts, 330 different personalities that would come across in one day. And so you can have someone who was a great interview 2 months later to come up to you and freaking out like, hey, I don't know if I can do this anymore. And so now you have to calm this person off that one cliff and bring them back down and just tell them everything's going to be okay. And then go through all different personalities. But there was times at 2 a.m. when I'm ready to go home, I'm like, all right, I've been here since 4 a.m. It is now 2 a.m. What am I going to talk about? And on the way home, literally a lot of times, like, so how was your day? It was pretty good, but we're ready to go home, are we? Yeah, we are. Look at the road. Oh, yes, I have to pay attention because it felt like you were in your own car listening and questioning your own self, which people, I'm pretty sure, driving by are like, what's wrong with that lunatic? Nothing. You just have to work where I work at. You would understand. But no, listen, Sandy, once again, I appreciate you coming on so you can meet
Absolutely.
the greatest
you,
group
Sandy.
of human beings ever with Ron Briscoe, Coach Johnson, Coach Mack. We didn't get into Coach Undisputed this evening, unscripted, but we will get back to it next week, which we have to cut the show a little bit short tonight for another obligation. But we thank Sandy for coming in again. Please let everyone know, number one, how they can find you and especially how they can find the Fifth Quarter Podcast.
So we're on the internet. Our website is 5thquarterpodcast.com, and we are on all the social media platforms at 5thqrt
Wow.
podcast.com. No, podcast. Listen, I'm just not on my game tonight. I'm going to
Come on, Sandy. Hey,
gonna
you did
be
a great
honest.
job, though. You did a great job tonight. We really
Yes,
appreciate
thank you
it.
for coming on.
Thank you so
you,
much.
Sandy.
And I'm on Twitter at SandyAdams_CO if anybody wants to give me a follow on Twitter. I tend to talk more sports on Twitter.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
If you are going to slide into her DMs, be professional. Is the
Oh,
best
yeah,
You
'cause-
said they slide into them DMs, huh?
Oh, no, because I go call you out on Twitter on the main thing.
Oh, okay. We got to be careful.
Sure will. So, listen, everyone, thanks again. We'll be back here again next Wednesday. Again, there'll be a transition in 2 weeks when we will go live Monday through Friday. And ooh, I see one comment popping in here at the very end. Oh, look, it's Mr. Johnson. Thank you, Mr. Johnson, for tuning in, and everyone else who tuned in live on
Angel,
Yeah.
can I get give a shout out to my my uncle who's going to be 99 years old
Oh,
tomorrow.
yes.
Oh,
Yay.
My uncle Richard, who lives in
Awesome.
Lexington, Kentucky, he's going to be 99 years old tomorrow. So I want to wish him a happy birthday. He said he was going to listen into the show. His son got him listening in. So I just wanted to say, hey, Unc, way
Happy
to go.
birthday.
Happy
Absolutely.
birthday.
Birthday.
Happy birthday indeed. 99. That's a great
I
life.
know.
Yeah.
That's good. So, and okay, Ron, what if he was on right now, what was the secret to living legacy 99?
You know what, Angel? I'm going to send you a tape that he made and talking about our family legacy, and you'll get an understanding of how he was able to live the life he lived and how long he lived. And one of the first things he's going to tell you is that he's a soldier for God. So that's number one.
That's good. Well, if the tape is just like our conversations, I'm going to enjoy this because
It is.
Ron and I, before I end the
He's
show,
good. He's
Ron
good.
and I said to Ron last week after the show, I was going to give him a call. I ended up giving him a call on Thursday. Per our usual conversations, Ron and I were on the phone for about an hour and 5 minutes. And again, it's so much fun when I get it. And I was on my way to another destination, call up Ron real quick. I'm like, oh yeah, well, we'll be on for like 5-10 minutes. No, an hour and 5 minutes later, we're on the phone again. So it's always, I love
Angel just doesn't want to get off the phone.
Ron.
He don't want to get off the phone. I be saying, Angel, look, I gotta go. Hold on a minute. Let me ask you this question.
We are. Listen, I said this to Ron. If I were to record, of course you can't record a phone conversation, but if we could, Ron and I by now, I think we'd be up to 10 episodes at this point with the conversation. But with that being said, I will leave that tonight. We will see you guys again back here at 8:00 next Wednesday. Make sure you follow everyone here on social media. You guys can follow the entire crew. If you look on the website, broadcastsouth.com, you'll get to see where everybody hangs out, where everybody is. and you'll end up enjoying the replay as well. So thank you once again, everyone. Thank you to everyone who tunes in over on Sports Radio 102.9 The Game. For my producers over in Studio B, we thank everyone. Enjoy your night, and we will see you all next week.
Bye, guys.
See you later, everybody. Thanks.